I'm so thrilled. We have two presenters who work for the Nature Conservancy and Maine Environmental Education Association. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I know they'll do a much better job than I would. And I'm going to mute myself and let them take it away.
Hi everyone, welcome to this online information session about the Community Resilience Partnership Program. My teammate Deb and I will go in depth about what this program is about, who funds it, what kind of communities we're working with, and the kind of support we provide. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Sinet Kroch. I use pronouns she and hers. And I work as a climate adaptation resident for the Maine Environmental Education Association and the Nature Conservancy. And the nature of my job is to work with communities in Maine on environmental projects and to help them adapt to the changing climate. That means I help them in implementing the nature-based solutions and other practices. And my team offers capacity to those communities that are interested in our support and in our network. And Deb, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Sinet. Very excited to be here presenting with you. My name is Deb Paredes. I use they, she pronouns, and I am Sinet's counterpart. I am the climate action resident with the Nature Conservancy and Maine Environmental Education Association. And I also provide climate action strategies and support on projects, as well as policy work with TNC and Maine Environmental Education Association. And we can go on to the next slide. So we can begin with, what is the Community Resilience Partnership? Essentially, this was born out of the Maine Won't Wait, Maine's 4-year climate action plan, actually. And it is administered through the Governor's Office of Policy, Innovation, and the Future, so GOPIF. And it offers climate mitigation and climate adaptation project support through grants and direct support. We, as TNC, offer direct support to grant applications and enrollment in the partnership. And the programming and grants are offered to tribal and municipal governments in addition to unorganized territories in Maine. And you can go to the next.
Yeah, so Deb already mentioned about who we work with in terms of communities members. So some of the goals of the Community Resilient Partnership Program is to increase climate change resilience, to reduce community carbon emissions, and to facilitate access to clean energy. And the only way we can do all of this is by supporting community members, and those include tribal nations, municipal governments, and other unauthorized territories, and they're based in Maine. So we work with them by helping them craft projects and also help with grant writing. And all of these goals, all of the CRP goals are in line with the Maine One Weight action plan.
So again, we can touch on our role through this program through TNC, the Nature Conservancy. While there is a service provider option where grants will go directly to a service provider, so like any kind of organization that is wanting to go through this process with multiple entities, we decided to not go for that service provider option and instead directly support municipalities and tribal governments in order to apply directly for community action grants. And we chose certain partners or researched certain partners with equitable access for this grant money. generally, and this was already part of the programming, but we just wanted to really hammer in on trying to provide equitable access and support to communities that are historically marginalized in Maine. So that could be like rural communities, coastal communities, communities with marginalized populations, New Mainers, and the like. And again, Sinet and I have like a pretty large role in kind of rolling this out with the Nature Conservancy along with other colleagues.
Yeah, so I just want to add that the reason why we don't want to be the service provider by being a part of the CRP is that if we become a member of the service provider, then we will be reached out by other communities. And that means we won't have the time and the capacity to help out communities that really need the most help, or those that kind of left out because they're not aware of the opportunities out there. So that's why instead of them reaching out to us, we reaching out to them using a network or from our colleagues who worked with them before, or even just like cold email just to see if they are interested in our support and if they know of any of these opportunities. So we are selective in terms of who we're working with, just because we want to help the right community and we want to make sure they have access to all of these resources and support. And talking about supports, these are just a list of a couple of things that we help those communities with. And again, because we work with most marginalized and most vulnerable populations, we provide capacity because we know that it can be very tiring and it's just a lot of work in terms of prioritizing what environmental project to work on, or just writing like project description, grant application, and other project related works. So that's why we provide capacity in supporting them with the whole process. We also work with community members to establish priority project, because sometimes it can be daunting to figure out what kind of community to prioritize or to work on, because there are different avenues that people can go with. So because as a team, we are more experienced in terms of what kind of communities that the Community Resilience Partnership Program funded. So by working with us, we can help to zone out more on those kind of communities and ideas. And in addition to that, we also help to research additional grants. And if the grants that we are aware of is something that we think the communities are, idea is also in line with, then we also connect those communities with the outside grants.
So what's really interesting about this program is actually the really streamlined application process for the grant. Makes it quite easy for municipalities to apply. But on top of that, we're aware, again, that capacity is pretty stretched pretty thin right now. So we provide support in acquiring a letter from the tribal chief or a municipal resolution in support of whatever project the organization or municipality or tribal nation adopts or decides on. And after that, they have to complete 2 self-assessments, which is one, a self-evaluation, which just includes certain things that they have to evaluate themselves in terms of climate change readiness plans and the like. And in addition to that, they also have to do a checklist of community actions, kind of reviewing what kind of projects they've already done, if there's other things that they've touched on within the community action list, just reviewing that to see where they can go from there. And this checklist also serves as kind of like a springboard for ideas that communities can also decide to adopt. After that, they hold public workshops in order to gauge community interests and needs, and they have to kind of record whatever came out of that meeting, any priority actions, participants, just to kind of engage their community and make sure that the community's needs match up with the project. And once these are all done, all they have to do is submit all their enrollment materials online. So again, as our role as the Nature Conservancy or residents is providing support for each of these parts of the application process and whatever they need, and that could be to writing parts of the grant to kind of looking over editing. We also offer assistance in doing the workshop ourselves. We're open to that, or facilitating the workshop, but typically communities tend to be fairly comfortable with that. So a lot of the times it's just with doing the grant and getting the materials together.
Yeah, it can sound like a lot, but it's not really. And another thing is that in case that the community members don't have the time to do all of the steps, we are there to help, as long as you give us permission and document that we need in order to like mirror the wordings and whatever you think is needed in the application, then we are happy to help out with that. So it's definitely a lot of back and forth communication just to make sure we get it right. So yeah, and in terms of submitting the enrollment materials online, the community members can either do it themselves or they can give us the permission to apply for them. But the main contact person is still the community member, not us. And then this is one of the examples of the community member that we work with, the Mi'kmaq community. Last week, Deb and I and another team member went to their farm and their hatchery. It was so cool. Like, we were there and then we see all the brook trouts, how they raise them. And we were like, this is so much food. And the fact that they are a small community, but being able to do that much for their own tribal members, and not only to provide healthy protein source to their tribal members, but their goal is also to support the whole community in the area. So now they only have, is it two big tanks that they raise their brook trout in, but they already received the funding to expand the facility to double the size. And in terms of the community resilience funding, community resilience partnership project that we are helping them with, is they want to transition from using electricity to solar energy. So we are working with them in writing application and supporting them in making sure they receive that grant. And we already submitted the application on September 20th, and we're still waiting to hear back. But we are very positive that they will receive the grant, just because they are already very active in the community project they're working on, and they already have a lot of documents ready. So we just have to help them with like fill in the holes that they need. And yeah, we see a lot of potential in their project. And another thing about the brook trout is that it's their cultural food source. And because of the toxic pollution in the river, that's why there's less brook trout. So the fact that they are very creative and innovative in raising the brook trout in the building, that is just so cool. And now they have the potential to transition it to solar energy. So that is another step in, not only do they help to reduce the carbon emission, but the way they do it is very environmentally friendly.
So, like Sinet said, we helped the Mi'kmaq Nation apply for this past cycle of grant funding. So now looking towards the future, we are now working with municipal leaders in Lewiston to also apply for the Community Resilience Partnership Program. And again, focusing on equitable community distribution of funds and resources. So we are looking at applying for heat pumps. So this would be a bulk heat pump purchasing program with the goal to equitably source where each of the pumps are going to kind of benefit those most vulnerable in Lewiston. And in addition to also getting some like municipal buildings, getting their emission kind of cut with their replacement of these heat pumps for their heating and cooling systems, which is really interesting because a lot of these buildings are super old. So getting these heat pumps will help them reduce energy costs and emissions, which is really awesome and exciting. So we're looking forward to figuring that out and applying for that for the next Community Resilience Partnership cycle in March. So we're super looking forward to that.
And we're almost to the question part of it. So if you have any more questions after this session and want to reach out, here is our contact information, both from Deb and I. So you can either screenshot this or we can forward that information to Susan, and Susan can also reach out to those who registered. So yeah. So after this session, if you have any more questions, we are happy to answer.
So now we'll take any questions or comments. Yeah, we have plenty of time, so feel free.
Thank you both. And yeah, if anyone has a question, just unmute and ask or type it in the chat. I see Linda. Linda says, your support is so exciting, in all caps. Have you gotten a list of municipalities to contact?
Yeah, so I can answer that. Thank you. We're also very excited. So we aren't working off of a list right now. We are mostly self-selecting municipalities and focusing on municipalities that we've determined through various requisites. So a social vulnerability index through the Maine Coastal Risk Explorer that has different kind of categories that list like what makes a community socially vulnerable. So those aspects we kind of cross-reference to what do we know about communities in Maine already, and who do we know from the get-go, from personal experience, who needs help essentially, and where are these gaps that we can fill. So it's still a working list as well, but we really want to be able to focus our capacity to and support to these folks who need our help essentially. And I don't know if Sinet, you want to add anything else?
No, I think you answered that beautifully.
Just as a follow-up for Linda, she said her church works with Salem Economic Ministries, so she'd suggest you contact Salem as another option. I think I saw Jessica's hand next.
Yeah, thank you both for presenting this. It's great that you are working on such important projects. I have a question about the process in terms of what happens if a municipality, like what happens if you can't get the municipality on board or some type of official entity, but there is concern at the kind of neighborhood or community level. And if there is like an actual, community or neighborhood that wants to pursue a resilience partnership, but they don't have kind of the official okay from like higher levels of government, is that something that you help communities navigate?
That is a very tough question. I don't have an answer, but I can get back to you after I talk to my team, and after I reach out to Brian, who is the person overseeing the community resilience program, because one of the enrollment materials is the approval letter from the tribal member or the municipality. So if we don't have that letter of permission, then I think it's harder to move through the whole process. But that is just my thinking. But I would get back to you after we talk to a team.
Yeah, that in some of my experience in working with some communities in southern Maine, I have found that there's a lot of concern at the really local level, but sometimes at other levels there's less concern. And so I'm just curious if there's a way that this project, this partnership program can help some folks move forward.
I know at least a little bit, we've kind of touched on that topic a little bit with Lewiston as well, kind of navigating municipal and community member benefits. And I think that's really just a conversation for, municipal leaders. How can we navigate a program whilst one benefiting the municipality and cutting their emissions or savings or whatnot, or reaping their own benefits while also helping the community. And I think that's a very tricky space to navigate. But, yeah.
Okay, let's see. We'll do Jake next, and then Amara, and then Tom.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm in the car, so I'm not going to come off video, so apologies for that. And hopefully the background noise is not too bad. So thank you both for this presentation. It's really very interesting. And I'm always struck by how innovative the Nature Conservancy is with their approach to climate and environmental issues. And I think that this is a really great example of that, where you have stepped outside the Climate Resilient Partnership service provider model to instead directly target at-risk and vulnerable communities. So I think that's wonderful. I just want to say that. And, in southern Maine, at least in southern coastal Maine, our municipalities have a pretty high capacity to go after funding and to fill out applications and all the things that are necessary to access the money to do the types of things that you're doing. But I think Jessica's comment is really important. I know I'm not going to name it, but there's a community that I know of in southern Maine where there is, let's just call it climate denial at higher levels of municipal government. And, I could see how the reticence of elected officials to accept climate science might have negative impacts for their community members who may be at high risk. So I think that to the extent that, that an organization like the Nature Conservancy can work around those types of issues diplomatically and strategically, I think that would be really beneficial. So I'd be interested to hear, what the rest of your team has to say about that. One question for you, and then I'll let others chime in. I'm curious as to what you think the capacity at the Nature Conservancy is, and maybe other organizations like the Nature Conservancy that are taking this approach for addressing the level of need that's out there. I know that you're sort of cold calling or using your networks to identify communities or tribes to work with. And I'm just wondering what the response has been. I know you don't have a list that you're going from, but do you feel at this point that that there's enough capacity within your organization to meet the need? Or do you feel like you need to expand and get more folks like yourselves in order to effectively meet the need that's out there? Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That is a really good question. I would say, if I'm hearing your question correctly, I wouldn't say necessarily that this specific program will cover the needs of all municipalities. And I'm sorry, can you ask your question again? I definitely had a train of thought.
Yeah, no problem. I just know that like the Nature Conservancy is very deliberate and strategic in approaching these types of projects and programs. And so I'm just wondering if there has been any kind of like, you know, assessment of what the potential for engaging with communities might be. So like knowing that you're not going to engage with all communities, but there are, you know, like you referenced the social vulnerability index. And so looking at those census block groups and knowing what the score distribution is across the state, do you have a sense of like what the need is out there and what sort of demands you're trying to fill? And just also if you could speak to like what the response has been from the outreach that you have done so far, and like how many communities are like actively interested in working with you to some level.
Yeah, in terms of the needs, that's actually interesting because we did use the social vulnerability index in the Coastal Risk Explorer. The information is actually quite incomplete for Maine, so it's hard to gauge what kind of need there is because the information kind of just really isn't out there. I know that the folks who worked on the Coastal Risk Explorer tool are actually updating it for other parts of Maine. So that's the thing, we kind of don't know what we know. So a lot of like this figuring out what communities are in need, we're really talking to a lot of community partners and folks that we had met in the past or places that we'd heard of that, you know, like you hear in the news, like there are these places that have this need, whether it be like housing or whatever that need, and kind of just talking to community members and figuring out where we can support. That is kind of what we did. It's difficult again because all of that information isn't out there essentially. So it's a lot of building community and using those community connections to figure that out. And I know, again, like this program isn't necessarily going to fill in all the gaps, but it's been really good to see that there are organizations like Window Dressers that have been working with communities, like a lot of tribal nations. Those gaps are being filled by other organizations through the service provider grants, and that's really good to see as well. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, and also even if the Community Resilience Partnership program is running for a couple of years and the Nature Conservancy is an organization in establishment, but we as a team only just started this process like last year. So we are very new. And then in terms of our capacity, we reach out to like a couple of communities at a time, and some decided to work with us, while some they already work with other service providers. So it's more of are we on the same page in terms of working together? Do our capacity meet their needs? And also if they already receive supports from other service providers, do we still want to work with them? So it's a lot of communications in terms of are this the community that need our help? And if they do they want to work with us? That's the important part too. So it's back and forth in terms of carrying that momentum and that work forward.
Alrighty, let's see. I'm gonna go to Amara in the chat box and then Tom and Kristen. Amara said, thank you both for your work. I am wondering if you could speak more to your process in centering the perspectives of those you are working with in building effective partnerships.
So we centering their perspectives by instead of using the term partnership, we use the term working together. And we only use the term partnership when the other side agree that that's the term we should use. Because it's us who approach them and show interest in working with them. But we can only do that when they agree to work with us, even if we have the capacity to help out. But if they're not interested in our help, then we can't push forward. And also, we are very intentional in terms of what language to use and who's taking the lead in the project. Usually it's the community members, and we are just following what, we only speak to what support and need they want from us. So it's the community members who take charge of how they want their project done and what kind of need they want. You have anything else to add, Deb?
Yes. And I know we also have been working really hard to build relationships with the folks we're working with, not just like a working, like professional kind of thing, but really sitting down and listening to them and being like, what do you need? What does your community need? You are the folks that live here. So we really want to take time and truly listen to what they need or what their ideas are, like understanding the limitations of this program and what we're able to do, and cross-referencing that to what they need realistically has been very important as well in deciding what kind of projects or how we can help generally. Yeah, thank you. That was a good question.
All right, Tom, you're up.
Yeah, my question is more of a procedural one. I'm familiar with grant processes and the competitive nature of it. I guess I'm assuming out loud that this is a very competitive process. Certainly, there's a significant need throughout the state and the country, for that matter, to address resiliency issues, be it waves and water action or carbon emission or whatever it is. So to that extent, how competitive, or maybe it should say how realistic is it that southern Maine communities, for example, would even rise to the level of being considered? I know we apply for a lot of this SRF, state revolving fund money for sewer work. And because our median household income to sewer rates, for example, are higher than the state, or I guess it's lower in this case than the state median, we don't really often qualify for any type of grants or assistance, even though the need might be there. So I'm wondering how much of an onerous process is it, and the probability for success, because these grants, as I think probably everyone here knows, takes a lot of time and effort and people power to develop a meaningful application that would rise at least to the level of being considered. Worthwhile stuff. I mean, it's great stuff, but maybe I'm too much of a skeptic in my old age, but that was my question.
Thank you. I feel like I can definitely speak to that. I feel like for the Community Resilience Project partnership project, what's interesting is I feel like folks haven't really heard about this. The two, the Micmac Nation and Lewiston, when we approached them, neither of them had heard about the program at all. So we find that is like a very reoccurring theme. So it's good to be able to help people identify those funds. And I feel like overall, I feel pretty good about how the likelihood of the grant being received. I just don't feel like it's super well known. It's just like one of those things that people kind of pass by sometimes. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
And another thing is that like I said, the process itself can be daunting and complicated, but it's a matter of whether you can break it down step by step and then take each step at a time. And that's when you realize that, oh, it's not that much. Maybe the community lack like a person to write the grant, or like just the time to sit down and go through all the process. So that's why we realize that when we step in and work with them in the thing that they don't have the time to do, that's when we're like, oh, actually, if we bring in more information and capacity, that's when they can achieve that. So that's why we find it very helpful, and I'm really glad that there are communities that are very open into accepting our help, and then it allows us to help them, and then we work together to achieve that goal.
Great, let's see. Kristen had to jump off, but she put her question in the chat. She said, thanks for your great work, Sinet and Deb. I need to run, so I'll ask my question here. Maybe Suzanne can fill me in later. Knowing that you are initiating these connections with those who may benefit from your support, do you see any patterns in those that are most willing to work with you?
The pattern I see is definitely excitement and surprise, like Deb mentioned. Like the two communities that one we worked with and another one we are working with, they mentioned that they never heard of that program before. So the fact that they were like, oh, we didn't know that this kind of service existed. So I see a lot of excitement, and then I guess it gives them hope and also motivation to like start doing that work or start gathering ideas, and then bring that work to like the meeting so that they can move the idea forward. So I see a lot of excitement.
Deb, do you have anything to add?
I think we also kind of sometimes see a little bit of like relief almost, like, yay, someone's coming to help, like someone actually is interested in listening and working with us and helping us figure out solutions to issues that like they've been having, or something like that. Like, yeah, just relief, I guess, after like all these long grant processes and working on these long projects. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? I think we've gotten to the end of those with hands raised and questions in the chat.
Hi, this is Jake again. Just one last question. If we, in our work or our daily life, know of a community that's interested, are they able to reach out to you, or do you prefer to just, would you prefer that not happen, that you're just picking the communities that you're interested in working with?
Yeah, I would say we left our contact information in the slides. I don't know if you were able to get them at all, but we're super open to hearing from communities and seeing what we can do to help out.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And we can share emails as well if needed in the chat.
All right, Linda, you have another question.
Yeah, again, I think that one of the most exciting parts of this effort is that you are spreading the information to people who normally don't get the information and then therefore don't have access to the resources. And so the resources go to the people who already have resources rather than the people who need it the most. So kind of following on to what Jake just said, just if you're okay with like suggestions for places that we are aware of, like I put in the chat about Salem, that are, communities in need, that just you approaching them and saying, are you aware? And even if they say, oh my gosh, we're too overwhelmed, we can't do anything, but just that they know that there is a resource that they can contact, I think that's tremendously important and empowering, because otherwise, like you said, none of them will know that this is available to them. So thank you for that. I guess that's not a question.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also one of the reasons why we do this kind of info session, just to spread the words that we are out here and we want to help. And then, I mean, through all of you, if you know of any communities that need help, or their, you know, their missions is in line with our work, then just, you know, reach out to us. You have our contact information. At least I believe Susan has it. So yeah, so send them our way, and then we'll try to do anything to help out. And if it's not through a direct help, we will send other resources through our network. So
I
yeah.
have a question. I'm wondering what challenges you've had with the process, and also what's been most rewarding for each of you.
I think what's been most challenging is communicating with people because, like, I think this process has really highlighted that people are very low on capacity and just feeling so stretched thin with multiple projects, especially when you look at like the tribal governments or like municipal governments, folks who work for them, they're just so low on capacity. So being able to like communicate with them properly has been pretty, not difficult, but just kind of long and drawn out. But it's not like super hard. It's just kind of, you are really excited to get the work done and to have them get the money, the grant money. So it can be a little challenging in that way. But for me, what has been the most rewarding was getting that first grant done and then going to see kind of the project that we were helping out with, at least securing funding. The Micmac hatchery is just a really amazing setup, and all the work they do is just really great. And it was great to go up into Aroostook County and see them and visit with them and learn about all the work they're doing. So that's been most rewarding for me so far.
The rewarding part for me is definitely receiving like trust from the community member in like having us on the behalf working on the application. And sometimes they don't have the time to write it themselves, so they just send us supporting documents, and then we do all the writing, and then they check, edit, see what they need to change. And to me, that's very rewarding, because it shows that they, one, they really care about this project, and two, they are happy in working with us in getting this project done. And the most challenging part is definitely communication. We have a community member who is like takes a very long time to respond to emails, but would prefer phone call or texting instead. So we have to be flexible and speak to that need. So sometimes it's an adjustment for us too, because we don't have a record of when the community members say they want to focus on this part of the project, and then my team member would be like, oh no, she communicated with me through phone call, and we were like, oh, that's why. So it's definitely communication.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Is there any way that WNUR can help you more?
The Wells Reserve, Linda's referring to.
If anything, I guess just spreading the word about the partnership program, because either way, through with or without the Nature Conservancy, municipalities are able to take advantage of the program. So they're able to reach out themselves or reach out to another service provider that's already doing work. Yeah, multiple ways to get in contact.